Hi, everyone. Today I'm excited to welcome Carrie Bradshaw from Houston, Texas, to the Miles for Hips Patient Experience interview series. Carrie is a mother of two, a 12-time marathon finisher, and a lifelong athlete who grew up playing soccer and running. Like many individuals with hip dysplasia, Carrie spent years experiencing pain without realizing there was an underlying cause. Despite ongoing lower back and hip pain, she assumed it was simply part of being an athlete, until at age 40, she suddenly found herself unable to walk and was diagnosed with congenital hip dysplasia. Leading up to her bilateral hip replacements, Carrie was told by multiple surgeons that she would never run again. Rather than accepting those limitations, she embarked on an extraordinary journey back to the sport she loves. She made history in 2025 by becoming the first person with double hip replacements to finish the Boston Marathon. Then in January, Carrie set the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon completed by a runner with bilateral hip replacements at the Houston Marathon. She's currently training for her next major goal, the New York City Marathon, as part of Meb Keflezighi's foundation, Team Meb. Carrie, I cannot tell you how excited I am for this conversation. Thank you for wanting to share your story in this way.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lauren. That was such a beautiful intro, by the way. Well done. I don't
Thank
think I could have written
you.
something so beautiful and well written. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and it's really cool that you're getting to do the interview because we've been in touch for over the last year.
Yeah, and I was at the marathon, at the Boston Marathon that you completed and made
Yeah.
history with that, which is incredible.
Tell me which mile you were at again.
I was at the finish line.
Oh, you were at the finish line.
Yes, I
Okay,
was
okay,
working at the medical tent at the finish
that's
line.
right. You told me that. That's
Yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I love that we finally get to connect in this way.
Yes. Yes.
I'd love to start out by hearing what's one thing that helped you the most during your hip dysplasia journey.
Yeah. Um, well, first and foremost, advocating for myself and interviewing multiple doctors and surgeons and doing my own research. I saw multiple surgeons from diagnosis until I had my hip replacements. And they were all great, but they had different philosophies. Most doctors, all of them but one, told me that I was either too young for hip replacements. I was age 40 at the time, or or that if I did get the replacements, I would never run again. And running was a huge part of my life, or it is a huge part of my life, and it just seemed like a worst case scenario situation for a runner. Like I was in pain, and then they're telling me you need to hold on and wait 5 to 10 years potentially. And then if you go through with these horrible surgeries you're not going to run again. I was devastated. Uh, Went through the whole grieving process, and then finally met after advocating for myself and seeing multiple surgeons and doing my research. I found my miracle surgeon, Dr. Stocks, who gave me the hope that I would run again with hip replacement. So my advice is to advocate for yourself. Don't give up, and yeah, do your research and interview and learn as much as you can.
That's so important. And one of the things that sticks out to me is there's such a common misconception or a narrative that happens with young people undergoing hip replacements that someone is too young to have a hip replacement. And I imagine that must have been incredibly hard to hear when that was the option that was being presented and what you were being faced with. So I'd like to hear how you navigated that and what has been your biggest challenge related to hip dysplasia.
So at my very first appointment, when I was having, when I had always had a little bit of pain, but it got progressively worse. So when I finally made my first appointment, I was at the point where I couldn't walk normally most days. That's when I was diagnosed, and they said, "Hey, Carrie, did you know you have congenital hip dysplasia?" No idea. I had no idea what that was. Um, at that point, they didn't know for sure if I was going to need hip replacements. They thought maybe that I could PT my way through it, but I couldn't. I tried everything. And honestly, when I would be in pain late at night, like in the middle of the night, and I would wake up and go to Google my symptoms and like what, try to diagnose myself, when hip replacements came up as the option or the procedure that was next, it just felt like a death sentence for runners. I was like, there's no way. Like this just that just sounded like the worst possible scenario, or a PAO, worst possible scenario. So I was in a little bit of denial and I guess grief, just the whole grieving process, and a little bit of denial and depression as I was going through the grieving process, trying to navigate what my next steps would be. And it just, with the doctors having different opinions, it made the process a little more confusing. But yeah, no, during that, when I found out that I would need hip replacements and it got to the point where that was the next step after I had exhausted all options. Yeah, I mean, it took a little while, but I was devastated and depressed. I felt like a huge part of my identity was being stolen from me, and I wasn't sure I would ever get it back.
That definitely can be heavy to, think about going forward. What does that mean for your future, especially as someone who's been so active? I'd love to hear about when did you make the decision that you were going to still pursue running after these hip replacements and you've thrived and just beaten the odds with it?
Okay, so I saw, like I said, I saw several surgeons, and one of them was told me before I met my miracle surgeon. One of them who's great. I still keep in touch with him. He had said, if you were my wife or sister, I would tell you to wait 5 to 10 years. He's since changed his perspective and his thoughts on it, but I that just seemed like, yeah, like a horrible situation, right? But when I finally met with Dr. Stocks and when I got an appointment with him, I asked him, do you think I will be able to run again? I told him I was a marathon runner after a hip replacement, and I wasn't expecting him to say yes, but I was doing my, due diligence, and he said, I don't have a problem with it. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? Oh no, it was like I was so excited, but also in shock. And then obviously, I don't want to just hear. I wasn't just looking to hear what I wanted to hear. I wanted him to back it up, and he did. So I was like, wait, why are you saying you wouldn't have a problem? And there's no guarantees that why are you saying that you would have potentially no problem with me trying to run and maybe run marathons later? But all of these other doctors and Dr. Google, the whole internet is telling me that there's no running with hip replacements. So he was able to back it up with some of his own cases that he's had and some of the things he's learned in the research and the data. But ultimately, there just isn't a lot of data, enough data out there on the new implants and technology. And he was he wasn't as conservative as some of the other doctors were. He was a little more confident that the new technology would be able to withstand, being active at that level. However, there were no guarantees. So when we talked through all of this and had multiple conversations, I finally felt like there was possibility and hope again. No guarantees, no certainty, but it was amazing. Like and at that point, I still didn't know I was going to go through with it. I was like, hip replacement sounded really scary to me, but I did have some hope that I had not had previously.
As someone who's diagnosed later in life with hip dysplasia, what's something that you wish others knew about hip dysplasia?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind as a runner is I've had, after when I was going through this and had my hip replacements, I was embarrassed and kind of ashamed to tell people what was going on because it was so foreign to most people our age or young people, right? You only think about your grandparents or 60, 70, 80-year-olds getting this procedure done. And I noticed that some people sort of wanted to blame it on my running, or the fact that I ran so much, that's what caused this, or I was, an athlete. So that's a pet peeve of mine and something that I try to put out there and to help other people as well who are navigating this, that it's not your fault. It wasn't my fault. This running did not cause my hip dysplasia or my arthritis. It was something I was born with. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but yeah, that would be the thing, that the misconception that I want to clear up to the whole. I just want to shout it from the rooftops that no, this is not my fault. It's not because of running. And yeah, I'm sure from what I understand, other people have experienced the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with my triathlons, I get comments about how I'm just running down my hips and that it can't be good for me and that's why I have hip pain and things like that. But when you have a congenital hip condition that's been with you from birth, running and doing activities is not going to be the reason why you're having like an issue with your hip right now.
Right. And I actually have a funny story or an interesting story. So when I was at one of the doctor's offices, um, prior to Dr. Stocks, when he was talking to me about hip dysplasia and, and how I've been an athlete my whole life and I didn't know I had it, he said, Carrie, most people probably with this condition would have been in the ER 10 years ago with so much, because of so much pain. And I don't necessarily think he meant because I have such a high pain tolerance, maybe a little bit of that, but because I was an athlete and I was strong, I was able to, I think, delay some of that severe pain. I always had some pain, but it didn't get severe until I was 40. But I almost feel like if you are strong and you're an athlete and you're used to taking care of your body and keeping your core and your glutes and your legs strong, um, I was able to sort of delay the onset of the severe arthritis. So in that case, being an athlete and a runner was a good thing.
Absolutely. That I think that makes sense. I know we've talked a little bit about the big things you've done post hip replacements, but I'd love to hear what's something positive that's come out of this for you.
Yeah. Well, I got my life back. Obviously I get to run again, and it's awesome getting that part of my life back. I feel like it's the second chapter of my running story, and I just have a completely different perspective on running. Have so much gratitude for being able to move my body and do what I love again. But I would say more importantly, the community that I've built. I think that is the biggest gift that's come out of all of this. I've been able to connect with so many people around the world who have hip dysplasia, arthritis, who are trying to navigate this confusing process. Should they get a PAO? Should they get a scope? Should they get a hip replacement? Should they wait? Like, I have talked to so many people and have connected with so many people like us around the world and have been able to be that person that I needed when I was going through this and desperately searching for hope. I get to give them, I get to show them what life can be like after a hip replacement and give them that hope that I needed. So, absolutely, I would, 100%. That's the coolest thing that's come out of all of this.
Was that your initial motivation to start your Instagram page? Because that's where I found you, was how you share on social media about your experience. Did you want to provide that story and that insight for what you wish you saw when you had started that journey?
Yes, I don't really know if I had a plan. My Instagram was private. I didn't really even post that much on social media. But at one point, when I was going through it and was making my comeback, somebody said to me, "Carrie, you should make your profile public." And I was kind of scared because I have young kids, so I, took a scrub some of the pictures of them, and yeah, I didn't really know where it would take me or how many people, because I felt I felt alone. We all do at some point, and so yeah, I mean, I guess I was willing for something inside of me said, you know what, just go for it, put your story out there, see what happens. And yeah, I certainly didn't expect for this, this many people to relate to my story and to connect with me. Yeah, it's been incredible.
Yeah, I think that social media component is really neat because it presents an opportunity where you can provide that story and that insight that other people might be looking for. And if they're hearing misconceptions about what they're going through, and you can kind of be there not only as a kind of peer mentor for those that are going through it, but they can look at it and hopefully feel less isolated and know that there are other people who have gone through something similar. I think it's so powerful. So thank you for sharing the way that
Oh,
you do on your social media.
well, thanks. And yeah, it's really cool that I feel like just getting to meet so many incredible people, even Dr. Stocks and Meb and you and everybody I've connected with. It's so awesome that's what's come out of what was such a horrible situation for several years for me. One of the people in the hip community actually told me before Boston. I've told this story before. He said, Carrie, you are our messenger of hope and strength. Like, you're basically going and you're running this race and you're going to give us the message that everything's going to be okay. There's hope and strength on the other side, that we can do, get our lives back. And so that was a really cool way to look at it. And it gave me a lot of motivation and strength when things were getting really hard after Heartbreak Hill in the Boston Marathon.
Absolutely. I'd love to continue the conversation in regards to like positive interactions and positive experiences that you've had. You talk a lot about your surgeon, Dr. Stocks. Can you share a positive interaction with your surgeon or another healthcare professional along your hip dysplasia journey that stands out to you?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'll talk about Dr. Stocks to anybody who will listen. He is amazing. I call him my miracle surgeon. He's like a superhero. Yeah, not only did he reconstruct and rebuild me and rebuild my hips, and give me that hope that I was looking for, to run again, but he has continued to support me every step of the way, and has actually come to both of my marathons to support me. Uh, Boston 2025, he literally rearranged his entire surgery schedule because he operates on Mondays and Wednesdays, and obviously Monday is Patriots Day. That's when the Boston Marathon is. So he rearranged his entire surgery schedule and flew to Boston from Houston and brought his son to come cheer for me and be there for me and be a part of it, which meant the world to me. Like I still don't feel like I deserve how much he's, supported me. And then, I mean, it was so special. And I thought about him so much during the race. And then I was able to gift him my bib. I framed my Boston bib and gave it to him after Boston, which was really special. And in the Houston Marathon this past January, when I was trying to set the world record, he came out. I saw him at mile 12 and a half and gave him a hug. And it was really cool. It gave me something to look forward to during the race. And just seeing him gave me a boost. And I don't know. I don't know. I try to tell him how much it means to me. I don't even think I have the words, but yeah, I just have the utmost respect for him, and he's just changed my life in so many ways. And I just love that. It just means the world to me that he continues to support me. He may come to New York City. I hope he does, but I don't know what his schedule is like, but that would be super cool if he's able to be there.
Yeah, he sounds like a really special person, and he reminds
Yeah.
me of some of the surgeons that I've had when I've mentioned my want to pursue triathlon and to do things that kind of you don't hear a lot of people with hip dysplasia or a lot of people who've gone through these major orthopedic surgeries pursuing. But with some of my doctors from the start, they've said, continue to push the boundary of what's possible after these surgeries and go and chase after what your heart wants. And so it's really cool to have those medical providers who just support you
Right.
from day one. And the fact that he's gone out to watch you run is incredible.
I know it's unbelievable. Like I still don't feel like I deserve the amount of support he's given me. It's incredible. I hope he can come to New York City. But yeah, yeah, it's we had the conversation so with my hip replacements that there's just not enough research and data on how long these implants or the technology will last. They don't have enough data yet. It could be 20 years, 30 years, maybe more. They don't know, but there's also a chance that because I'm running a lot now and doing what I love and running marathons, which isn't normal, they could wear out sooner. We just don't know. And so we had the conversation um, a couple of times. Here's the deal. Let's say hypothetically you can get 20 to 30 years out of your hips with just everyday activities, not running marathons. Maybe a little bit of running and impact sports, or impact activities, but no running marathons. Or you could get 15 to 20 years, a little bit less, hypothetically speaking, but you get to do what you love for 15 to 20 years. And I was like, well, that's the easiest question in the world, hands down. I'll take if those are my choices. Even if I got 5 years or 10 years, I'll just get get the procedure again. And we don't even know if I will need it. And by that time, who knows what the technology will be like. So I made that decision, we talked about it. And so, it is, and I think that's where doctors have different philosophies. They want to protect the implants so that they can last as long as possible. But by doing that, people don't, if they don't give their patients the decision and wait to, weigh the pros and cons, they're potentially not fully living their life for those years, when they're just trying to be conservative and save the implants. So that was my decision, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a very well-informed decision, and that's important to
Yeah.
have that, those conversations. But
Yeah.
just really cool to see you continuing to go out there, and then you're doing so incredible with it. Did I actually have a question? When you went into the Houston Marathon, did you go into it with the intention of breaking the world record, or was that kind of just something that happened?
So yes, apply the intention. It's a huge process to apply to set a world record. It's like applying for citizenship. Like
Oh,
it's
wow.
very, it was very intense. And even after I set the record, the amount of documentation and documents I had to provide to them was insane. So yeah, no, I had to. I spent months leading up to the Houston Marathon applying and getting everything ready, and it had to be approved. And then after race day, when I said it, I had to submit so many photos, videos, a doctor's letter, witness statements, the a course direct, the course director, or the somebody from the marathon committee had to write a letter and show that the course was eligible. I mean, everything. There was so much, and then that all had to get approved. Videos, photos, everything. So yeah, it was finally approved in, was it April, late March. I got the official approval, and then the Guinness World Record frame. I ordered the frames with the certificate, and they came, and I gave one to Dr. Stocks for his office, and my son Theo wanted one for his room.
That's awesome. What is training with bilateral hip replacements like?
Mentally and emotionally, I just have a lot of gratitude. I mean, I just feel so lucky that I don't have that pain anymore. I don't want to say it's 100% pain free, because my right hip flexor does give me some issues still. But compared to where I was before, it's amazing. Most days, I forget that I have them, especially when I'm running. Now, sometimes I'll get a little bit of like a pinching feeling in my hip flexor or a little tightness, but that doesn't usually happen when I'm running. So yeah, I mean, no complaints at all. I will say too that yeah, it's just nice to be able to go out there and not think about it. But also that did take a little while to get to that point. Like for the first couple of years, even at Boston, I was still trying to learn how to trust my body and figure out my limits. And I still am to some degree. It's been 3 years, but I've gotten more comfortable and confident with my new body now. But so yeah, I'm in a great place now, knock on wood. But for the first couple of years at least, it as I was progressing, I was trying to figure out what my limits were and getting to where I could trust that I wasn't going to hurt anything. So
Well, I'm so glad to hear where you're at now, and thank you for sharing your story in this way. I think it will be really helpful and, of course, inspiring for others in the hip community to hear your story and hear how you continue to move with hip dysplasia and your hip replacements. And we will be cheering for you in New York.
thank you so much for interviewing me and for having me on to talk. I'm so glad I get to see you in person, because I know we were going to try to meet up in Boston when I was there, but it was just too crazy. So this is cool, and hopefully I'll see you in Boston.
Yes,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. This has been great.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.